issues that are extraordinarily important, have decided to put aside party labels and to do the right thing, and to come together in a bipartisan way, and to try to help to fix the big problems that we've been talking about. And so tomorrow, the State Assembly, I believe, will complete the job of bringing bipartisan reform for the pension and benefit system in New Jersey.
Of its population to contribute to their health benefits and pension. I'm wondering how you came up with the 35%, which is above the private sector?
Well, that was actually the product of a negotiation. As you may know, my original proposal was 30%. In the process of negotiating with the Democrats, they wanted a sliding scale that starts at a much lower end for people at the lower end of the pay scale, 3 or 4%. Premium, up to 35% of those people making the most money on the pay scale. So that was one of those compromises that I talked to you about earlier. The grid was the product of a negotiation with them. My original proposal was for 30% across the board for everybody, so everybody was treated the same. they wanted to have a grid which changed by almost, I think it's about $5,000 or $6,000 increments as you go up from around $20,000 or so all the way up. And so that's a product of part of the negotiation that we had with the Democrats. And they felt, and I now agreed, because it's my plan too, it's part of the compromise that we agreed to this graduated scale of payment. Remember too, that this is phased in over 4 years. And so it's 1 quarter each. So ultimately, at 35%, your first year you pay about 9, then you scale up to 18, then to 27, then to 35. So it scales in over 4 years. If you're at that pay scale, that puts you at 35% of premium level. Now remember, we're converting from a percentage of salary system, for the most part across the state, to a percentage of premium system. The other thing that's going to happen is right now, the state and most municipalities offer a very limited number of plans. And most of those plans are the most expensive plans. Family plans that range somewhere in the $20,000 range premium. So one of the things that this legislation also requires is that we come up with at least 9 plans to choose from.
I don't see the shared sacrifice, Governor. I see in this pension bill you coming to the same people who were victimized and had their pensions siphoned away. We contributed to the pension system faithfully and fully every year. And if the funding formula had problems in it, well, I wish they had been found out and addressed sooner, but they haven't been. And now you're coming, it seems, just to us.
Well, which have you come to?
Well, I think there
To
are...
fix the problem, which have you come to?
Absolutely. Well, I don't understand why the millionaire's tax was vetoed twice.
How is it that you think we are going to lower unemployment and create private sector job growth in this state when the people who come here to grow jobs are going to have to pay 4% higher taxes than if they went across the river to New York, or 8% higher taxes than if they could go to Pennsylvania? The reason New Jersey has a higher unemployment rate than either of those states is because our taxes are more onerous than either of those states. And the solution that's brought to me is make taxes higher. And it creates $500 million, which does nothing to solve the problem that you say you were victimized by. But what it will do is put more of the private sector employees out of work who are funding the pension that you're going to collect. So I don't understand the logic of this. This is about class warfare and pitting people against each other. It's not about logic, because $500 million doesn't solve anything in the context of a $29 billion budget, a $54 billion pension deficit, and a $67 billion health deficit. And so, I'm not going to raise taxes on anyone in New Jersey.